Hi everyone, I'm going to do for grade 12 the poem An Elementary School Classroom in a Slum by Stephen Spender from Flamingo. Before I begin, let me tell you that I would like you to do poetry in a scientific manner. I would like you to understand how poetry is read and how poetry is done, because that's a very important part of learning. So therefore, this is something that you can find in my book, Writing with Ease, because I've got an entire poetry section there. And that would be a good way to start doing poetry on your own. For children who would like to have this in Hindi, I'm going to give you all the meanings of the words that I have in this video in my description box. I would like you to go and read it. And in between, I shall use some Hindi, but I would like you to hear this in English, because at the end of the day, you are going to write in English. They're not going to let you write that paper in Hindi. So it's good to hear the English also. Okay, so let's begin right away. You've got a picture there. I put a lot of pictures so that it makes a lot of sense to you. When you actually see things visually, you realize it. So this is what an elementary school classroom in a slum would look like, isn't it? Take a look at the walls and at the children and at the books. There is something very sad and shabby about it. So this is what he's writing about, Stephen Spender. Stephen Spender is a contemporary poet. Our time, he died in 1995, which is, well, maybe about 25 years ago. But he wrote, you would probably call him a 20th century poet, right? English poet. He was a socialist and a pacifist. Socialist is one who believes in equality, that there should not be rich and poor, that all of us are equal. And of course, a pacifist is somebody who doesn't believe in war. They say war is evil and should never happen. So this is the kind of person he is. He was influenced by Marxist philosophy. Karl Marx was communism, and they believe that a classless society, each person must give according to his ability, and we must give each family according to their needs. So it's an ideal kind of society. So that's what he believed in. Disturbed by the gap between the rich and the poor, social injustice, class struggles, he was concerned about all these things, Stephen Spender. Critical of the indifference and apathy of the privileged towards the disadvantaged. Now, if you say these are big words, trust me, you need to use big words, otherwise they won't give you good marks, right? You will need these words in future in college. So it is worth picking up these words now and for you to start using them. So critical of the indifference, he criticized it, the indifference and apathy. Apathy is not caring about. The rich people not caring about the poor people. Let them suffer, it's all right, we have everything. That attitude is something that bothered him. Class is rich and poor, isn't it? Social injustice, because some people have so much and some people have so little. Here, the elementary school stands for the foundations of society. So when you talk of the poor, where does the poverty start? The poverty starts at the bottom, when the children are born into poverty. What they see around them is very different from what people from well-to-do homes see. So when a child comes into a family where there is enough to eat and enough to wear and good education, that child's life and environment is very different from this poor child who lives in a slum. And the elementary classroom is an important part of it. We'll talk about it. Created where discrimination begins at the bottom of the level. So it's at the bottom that those children start feeling that we are different, that we don't have, and there are other people in the world who have. This starts at the bottom, and he says that is wrong. The poet brings home to us brutally a problem and provides a solution. So he's brutal in the way he expresses that problem. There are some, now if you say poverty, you can do it in many ways. Some people will do it with a joke. Some people will do it gently and say, why don't you do it? They might kind of plead with you, or they might persuade you. I think we should all be good. Or they might talk about God and how God's children should all be equal. There are many ways to do it. But Stephen Spender is brutal. Brutal means he uses imagery that is harsh, that hits you very badly. You feel extremely miserable when you read his poetry, because that's how he's awakening you up. That is his style. Important for you to know. So let's do a title check, which I always do. So if you look at my book, Writing with Ease, I will have told you always to do a title check. So a title, An Elementary Classroom in a Slum, is quite self-explanatory. It tells you that what it is, and that's exactly what it is. So elementary, what does the word elementary stands for? But in everything, when you come to grade 12, when you get a poem, it will always have a deeper and profound symbolism. This is what you need to remember. It will not be just what it seems. So the word elementary there, why do you think he put the word elementary? He could have just said a classroom in a slum. But he said elementary classroom in a slum. Elementary because an elementary classroom is basic. Kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, very primary classes, basic, foundation, beginnings, root, rudimentary, fundamental. See, that is where it all starts, the problems. Classroom, what does classroom mean? Classroom stands for the bigger thing of education, knowledge, learning, ethics. Ethics, right and wrong. It starts at the cradle. Down there at the bottom, you start understanding right from wrong. You start observing people. You start looking at their hypocrisy. All this starts at the bottom when they are small, not when they are grown up. Ethics, skills, attitudes to the world, worldview. What is this world all about? Every child comes into the world asking that question. What is this world about? And they start looking at things. Now, what do these children see when they look? That is the big question that Stephen Spender is asking. And then the values that we build. So if you say you have to be honest and you have to be patient and you have to be tolerant and you have to be kind and you have to be so many amazing things. Those values, how do we get those values? And what are the values that are given to these children? This is what he's asking. Slum. Let's look at the word slum. Slum means poverty. Obviously, when you say slum, you immediately think of poverty. Squalor. Squalor is dirty, kitchad everywhere, very filthy. Disease, and of course, if it's filthy, then you will have disease, you will have hunger, darkness, neglect. Nobody cares. The child is sitting and crying on the street, eating from the dust. Nobody to care. Dilapidated schools. So if you go into a classroom or a school, then it'll all be falling apart. Like that picture we saw where everything is falling. It won't be like the picture on the right here, where all the children are sitting beautifully dressed in a clean classroom. It won't be like this. It's going to be more like this picture on the left, where there's so much dirt outside, and then it'll be in a building like that, where it is, the building itself is breaking. No health facilities, hopelessness. The poor people there don't see any hope, and it's all about survival. They are saying, how can I get my food today? What should I do to get it? I'll do anything to get it. This is where it all comes down to. And of course, because of that, it is gloomy and there is crime. They will take it from you if they don't get it, because they don't see any other way. They are helpless. So this is what your title is clearly telling you. If you think a little bit, you can sit and write all this because you can think about it. Not just common sense, okay? Now let's look at the poem. I'm going to read the poem first, and then we'll do it stanza by stanza. So an elementary classroom in a slum, the poem. Now what I want you to know is all these red words are words that are negative. They are negative words, and all the blue words are positive words. Positive in the sense they are not like They don't belong to the slum and the darkness. So I just want you to look at how, generally, if you look at this, you'll find more red words than there are blue words. Now, these are 2 stanzas, and then these are 2 more stanzas that you have. So you've got a 4 stanza poem. An elementary classroom in a slum. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces, like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor, the tall girl with her weighted down head, the paper-seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted, unlucky air of twisted bones reciting a father's gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. At the back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young, his eyes live in a dream of squirrel's game in tree room other than this. On sour cream walls, donations. Shakespeare's head, cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities, belled flowery, Tyrolese valley, open-handed map awarding the world its world. And yet, for these children, these windows, not this map, their world, where all their futures painted with a fog, a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky, far, far from rivers, capes, and stars of birds. Surely Shakespeare is wicked, the map a bad example, with ships and sun and love tempting them to steal for lives that slyly turn in their cramped holes from fog to endless night. On their slag heap, these children wear skins peeped through by bones and spectacles of steel with mended glass, like bottle bits on stones. All of their time and space are foggy slum. So blot their maps with slums as big as doom. Unless governor, inspector, visitor, this map becomes their window, and these windows that shut upon their lives like catacombs break open till they break the town and show the children to green fields and make their world run azure on gold sands and let their tongues run naked into books. The white and green leaves open, history theirs, whose language is the sun. If you read it like this, it will not make any sense to you. So, how do we make sense of poetry? That is the question. You might have to read it once more, and you might have to look at certain symbols. Okay, so we'll do it stanza by stanza, aram se. Now let us look at these pictures. We've got that is Shakespeare. This is the Tyrolese Valley that he talks about. The Tyrolese or Tyrolese Valley is somewhere in Austria, in Europe, beautiful valley. And Shakespeare, of course, is the paramount of high learning. Shakespeare means somewhere up there in the skies, like Kalidasa, Shakespeare. Very, very advanced learning. So you've got these 2 pictures in that classroom. Elementary slum classroom. Remember what we talked about? So you will see immediately that there is a mismatch. कुछ जम नहीं रहा है. शेक्सपियर और टिरोलीज वैली, ये जो पिक्चर इन बच्चों के साथ क्या कर रहा है वहां पे? So there's something horribly wrong, isn't it? कि इन बच्चों को ये सिखाया जा रहा है. This is the question. कोई मेल है इन दोनों में? So the irony of it. Irony is when you don't expect something and you see something there and you say, what is this? What is this doing here? So that's one of these things you just want to keep in mind. I just put the pictures for you. The second picture is there is a map, world map picture. So the world map is like a window to the whole world. So when we look at a map, we can say, oh, acha, acha, we are in Mumbai or we are in Delhi, but my Bua lives here and my Tau lives there. And you can actually point to different parts of the world and say, my, my friend lives in America and somebody lives in England. And this is where kangaroos are, or that is where you see the Alps. You can actually start placing things because that's a big window. The map is a big window of the whole world. There are so many things happening. But when these children look out of the window, this is what they see. See this picture? That is what they are seeing when they look out. Narrow gully, dirty, everything cramped, no place. That is what they see. See, this is what they see when they look out of the window. Slums, all sticking together. And you have a little boy who sits in the back bench and he's dreaming about this, about being on a tree and about climbing and having fun. That is his dream. But actually, what are we doing to him? We are putting him on a bench at the back and doing something with him that has no relationship with him. So I've just given you one jhalak of the poem, but let us do it stanza by stanza so we understand and we can appreciate it and see what a powerful poem Stephen Spender has written. So, okay, so stanza 1, we're first going to look at the meanings of words. Gusty waves, far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces. So gusty waves, the energetic, strong, lively waves. In the sea, you have waves. Those are gusty. That means they're full of life and energy. And far, far from that, not anywhere near gusty, not energetic, not lively, not strong, nothing. Those children's faces. What kind of faces? Very sad faces. Faces that have no energy, no liveliness, no strength. Like rootless weeds, weak, unwanted plants. You know, when you have weeds, you have good plants, and then you have all this growth around it. And if you pull it up, it will come out very quickly. Those weeds, you know, and you see gardeners, they'll be plucking away. And only the flowers will be left. All the weeds are plucked out because they're very weak. No, the roots are hardly there. That kind of faces, like rootless weeds. Those children are like rootless weeds and their hair torn around their pallor. There's something about their hair which is not combed and it seems to be torn around their pallor. Pallor is a face that has got no color, no blood, anemia. So poor children. This is what he's first. See, there is a certain violence in the imagery. There is a certain harshness. He's not sparing you. He's not saying the poor little children. He's not using simple words. He's using harsh imagery there. He's saying like rootless weeds, hair torn around their pallor, some of them. The tall girl. Now you see those 2 colons, those 2 dots there. That means he's now going to, he's told you 2 things. Now he's going to describe, giving you examples. So you've got 4 examples there. One is the tall girl weighted with the weighted down head. Weighted down means head that is down. Head is not held high. This is a sign of pride and confidence. This is a sign of resignation, tiredness, defeat. That is what she's feeling, failure. So down, and yet she's a tall girl. Look at that, right? So rootless weeds are weak, unwanted plants. Pallor is pale, white, bloodless, anemic face. Weighted down is downcast with shame or maybe failure. It could be anything. So the tall girl. The paper-seeming boy with rat's eyes. See this enjambment? Now he's not stopped the sentence here. He started another one and then he's taken it into the next line. That is called enjambment. When you don't stop it at the end, but you continue the sentence. The paper seeming, like paper thin. Rat's eyes. What is a rat's eye? Rat's eye is where you're sly and you're waiting. You're like looking like this, waiting to see what you can steal. That sort of sly eyes. The stunted, unlucky air. This is the third thing starting. See again, enjambment. It's not stopped here and then starting on the next line. He's starting in the middle. The stunted, unlucky air of twisted bones. So what does that mean? Stunted means not developed properly. So they are short, the children, because of malnutrition. Of twisted bones, unlucky heir. Heir is somebody who inherits a lot of money. And here he's called unlucky heir. He's unlucky because he's got, what has he inherited? Not money. He's inherited disease of twisted bones. See those bones there that I've shown you? That's a gnarled, twisted kind of disease, maybe arthritis, something like that he's got from his father. Reciting his father's gnarled disease, the disease of his father. Now this reciting his lesson actually, but instead of his lesson, the poet has put gnarled disease. See, that thing interferes. Instead of saying reciting his lesson, which would be what normal children will do, here you've got a disease that is interfering in the education. So it's a way of writing. It's got a name, which I'm going to talk about in the devices, but it also tells you how disease and poverty and malnutrition will interfere with the education of these children. Gnarled disease, his lesson from his desk. At the back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young. So there is one bright, sweet little boy at the back. His eyes live in a dream. He is dreaming of squirrel's game in a tree room other than this. So other than this, not this. This is not what he's dreaming about. He doesn't want to be in this classroom. He wants to be on the tree. So how mismatched their education is, and how the different 4 types of children, one is a survivor, one is waiting to get maybe food, maybe attention, the boy, the paper thin boy. So just his descriptions are fantastic. So gnarled is noted, paper seeming boy is thin as a sheet of paper and inherits. That's your meaning, we've taken it out. Stanza 1, I'm going to talk to you about the notes and devices. So I've told you this is what we did today. This is what we did now, the stanza 1. The notes, I told you to look at the punctuation and the enjambment. You'll notice that punctuation is in the middle, here and there, full stops, commas, all sorts of things. It's not in regular form. You should also note the contrasts and ironies. So the tall girl and the downtrodden head. So you will find a lot of 2 opposing things coming in. So you've got the sweet boy, and then he's dreaming of something else. You have rootless weeds. So you have children, but their faces are thin and miserable. So tall but ashamed, and I've given you those contrasts here. Tall but ashamed, painfully thin, devious survivors. Devious means very cunning survivors. Inherited disease, reciting an inherited lesson. So that lesson is also inherited. It is not what he wants to do. It's something that has been given to him by somebody else. Unlucky, both counts. And gifted dreamer. So that last child is a gifted child. Is a child who would have been wonderful in any other place in a school. But now he has to sit at the back and just learn things that he doesn't want to learn. He might have been a great innovator, but he's a misfit. Nothing is going to happen to him because they're not going to give him what he needs. That's what it is. So it's brilliant. In one frame, one stanza, he's given you a kind of a quick description of the population, different types of children sitting in that classroom. And what lots of devices in this poem, guys. So you've got alliteration, you've got anaphora. Anaphora is where you have the same word being repeated in every clause. There's a repetition, anaphora. So you have the girl, the paper seeming, the stunted. You've got that everything beginning with the. Metaphor is paper seeming, like paper. Doesn't say like paper, it would have been a simile. Now it's a metaphor. Simile is like rootless weeds. So their faces are like rootless weeds. Synecdoche, his eyes live in a dream. It's not only his eyes, his whole body lives in a dream. Synecdoche is when you take one part and then you describe the whole. So it's actually the whole boy, but then we've used eye. And a zeugma. A zeugma reciting his father's gnarled disease, his lesson. So what have we done? We've taken this word reciting, this verb, and we have used it for 2 things. One is a lesson and one is the gnarled disease. Both. So which is being recited? It looks like both are being recited. So that sort of thing is called a zeugma. Okay, that's the name of the figure of speech. And oxymoron and irony are, of course, unlucky heir. Always heirs are considered to be lucky, but this poor boy, the irony is he has inherited a disease. He has not inherited any money. Positive, not positive, negative inheritance. So that's what it is. So then he has started with telling you exactly how it is and showing you how unfortunate these children are. Now let's go to the second stanza. See, you'll understand it. When I finish all the 4 stanzas, you'll have a good picture. The second one, let's look at the meanings of words. So on Sa walls, donations, Shakespeare's head. So these are donations that somebody has given. One Shakespeare's head ka picture. Cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities. So if there's a picture of a city, like this one, see here, this city. So you've got domes. These are domes. See, this is a golden dome of maybe a church or something, and this is a government building. So when you look at temples and government buildings with domes, they all stand for power, and cities stand for money, stand for religion, which is all powerful, all power symbols there. So cloudless at dawn, civilized dome riding all cities. Riding is dominant. And they are riding all cities. All the cities have got these big, big domes. And they are a sign of civilization. That is far away from these children. The children in the slum are like some rats in a hole. On the other side, there is a city with these wonderful domes that show civilization. Where you say, look at that. What a smart city. See? But not theirs. It's not theirs. On their walls, sour cream wall, which are dull and faded and shabby, on that wall, there is surprisingly one head of Shakespeare sitting there, and it's a donation. Belled flowery Tyrolese valley. So that valley, beautiful valley from Europe, is sitting there also. Look at the kind of pictures that are sitting on the room. And they are all very symbolic of the way in which we treat the poor. We go and put on them a syllabus that has nothing to do with them. That has everything to do with people who are traveling, or people who are going to get great jobs, or people when they look out of the window, they can see the dome of a church, or they can see a government building. These children looking out, their window doesn't show anything like that. Their windows show dirt. And on them, you have gone and put these pictures on their walls. So it's ironic, right? Awarding the world its world. So there is a map also. There's an open-handed map, which is like a big map, and then it's got the world, and the world seems to be awarding the world. That means saying this is the world. So there is no way in which you can negotiate and say, no, that is not my world. Let's change the map. You can't do that. It is already giving you the world, saying the world is like this. Oh, your world is not like that. Oops. It's like that. It's quite sad. It's not bothering. Oh, your world is not like this. This is our world. So it's awarding you. It's saying, take this. This is the world, whether you like it or not. Awarding the world its world. And yet for these children, these windows, not this map. So the map is not their world. Their map, their window is that window which is there in their classroom from which they look out. And what do they see there? Their world. Those windows in the classroom will show them a world that is where their future is painted with fog. One of the big images in this poem is fog. Fog is dhund. What is the quality of a fog? Fog is something through which you cannot see. Fog is something where there are accidents happen. Fog is something where there is no clarity. There's no brightness. So when you say future painted with a fog means the future is dull. The future is vague. That is what it means. Okay. So where all their futures painted with fog, a narrow street. What do they see? A narrow street. These are the things they are seeing. A narrow street sealed in with a lead sky. So it's a street, and on top of that is a sky which is made of lead. So if you stand in those narrow streets between the slums, see the slums are like that, and then you stand in between and you look up, all you can see is a lead sky, sky that is the color of lead. And that is terrible. You know, it's a claustrophobic image where you feel like you're boxed in. You cannot escape. That's the feeling you get. Far, far from rivers, capes, and stars of words. And what does the other map have? It has got rivers and capes and stars of words. Stars of words are not stars in the sky, but stars of words, Shakespeare. Lots of beautiful words. That's what it has. See? So if you now you'll find the meanings of words are easy. Dawn is sunrise, civilized dome is education, civilization, symbols of architecture, government, religious buildings, all the power centers. If taken as sunrise, some people say though the dome is actually the sun coming up. If you want to take it like that, then the word civilization becomes what we call a transferred epithet. That means it's light and power. Again, sun is a symbol of light and it's a symbol of power. And if you look at civilized dome riding all cities, you'll have a different sort of an image. But anyway, it's a symbol of power. Remember this. Riding is dominating. So the Tyrolese Valley, as I showed you in the first slide, is a beautiful ice-free valley in Austria. These windows to the slum world, we already know, sealed in is locked in, incarcerated. Incarcerated is to be buried. Literally when you're buried in like a prison or a box or something, that kind of feeling. Lead is gray, cold, sunless, metallic sky. Capes are large pieces of land that stick out into the sea, coastline. So beautiful, beautiful landscapes, right? So this is your meaning, and let's now go to notes and devices. Already I have explained what that means to you, so it will be easier. It's good like this to do two explanations, you know. It takes longer, but you'll get it better. On sour cream walls, donation Shakespeare's head. So sour cream walls are that are faded and shabby, and it's a metaphor that leaves a sort of a bad taste in the mouth. Sour cream is not necessarily good cream. Sour cream is also cream that has gone spoiled, not the kind of sour cream that you eat in restaurants. Okay, so it's a metaphor. Sour cream walls, instead of saying walls like sour cream simile, you say sour cream walls, which is a metaphor. Remember this. Donations are charity. Now, when you give charity, it is random. If people say, oh, let's give children in the slum, instead of giving them good nutritious food, we'll send chocolates. You see what I'm saying? It's exactly like that. So you send a Shakespeare's picture, you send a picture of a Tyrolese, they're never going to see it, and it's nothing like their world. So you have given donations that have no meaning, meaningless donations, thoughtless donations. Images of dawn, domes, bells, flowers, exotic valleys, all of these things is a map of an alien world. It doesn't have anything to do with their lives. The window to their squalid world. Their world is squalid. Squalid meaning dirty and filthy. Their environment is only opening they have. When they look out, the only opening they see, this is the world they see. So that has no meaning. Foggy future is unclear, blurred, failed. Narrow streets sealed in with a lead sky, as I told you, is claustrophobia. Claustrophobia is a kind of a situation that not a situation, it's not a disease also. It's a kind of a condition that you have when you feel closed in. Some people can't travel in a lift, or some people can't go into an airplane. They start sweating. That is claustrophobia, a sense of being boxed in. Okay. So narrow street, all of that these are the kind of images you get. The devices you have is irony. Shakespeare's head on the wall is a very alien image. Like I told you, it has got nothing to do with them. Shakespeare is a symbol of higher learning, and you wonder what it is doing in an elementary classroom. You don't learn Shakespeare in primary. So you see, it is completely mismatched. Somebody who doesn't care. It is just that, oh, you have to teach them something. Okay, here, give them something to learn. That's what it is. Nobody has really thought about them. It shows the thoughtlessness of the syllabus. Personification, domes, riding cities, map awarding. So all these are things that have no life, and then they have given it life as if they're riding and awarding and things like that. So personification. Metaphor is the window. So the window is like a sort of a symbol also. So it's a metaphor to the world. So it is like a window to the world. That's what it means. Metaphors and the stars of words. When you have these stars of words, words that look like stars. So therefore, stars of words is also a metaphor. Oxymoron, painted with fog. Because when you paint, you always paint with color. You don't paint with fog. So therefore, unusual things sitting together, like unlucky air, is also an oxymoron actually. Lead sky. Sky is always blue, and then you have this lead. Also, sky is not hard, and then you have, at least you get a feeling it's not hard. It's all clouds, and then you have lead to describe it. So those are good oxymorons that have been used. Oxymorons show the impact of an oxymoron is to show the disconnection, complete disconnection, complete opposites sitting together. Alliteration is far, far from, that is repeated. So that's what you have in the second stanza. You're definitely now getting a better idea of where this poem is going.